Hey, what you reading for?
Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where usually I talk about books, literary horror, classics, and contemporary. But today I want to broach a different topic, writing. I read a lot of books. As an editor, I have worked on a lot of books. I have written a lot of books. And through this experience, I have come across writing that isn't as good as it could be, to put it one way. Weak writing, poor writing, perhaps. I prefer to say unpolished writing, or manuscripts that aren't quite ready for publication, manuscripts that could use a bit more work. And these manuscripts or these books have a few common characteristics that they share. And today I want to talk about these common characteristics. If you are a writer, I think it would be a very good idea to be at least aware of some of these problems I come across frequently. And perhaps you recognize a few in your own writing, and hopefully what I talk about today will encourage you to re-examine some of your writing choices. The points I'm going to address in this video may seem a bit strange. I am going to go to some weird places in this video, and there is a chance that you are going to disagree with me. You might say, hey, wait a second, Michael, I do that in my writing all the time, and my writing isn't weak, my writing isn't unpolished. Maybe so. I'm not saying your writing is weak. I haven't seen your writing. I couldn't possibly know. What I am saying is simply in the course of my professional activities as an editor and a writer, I come across these frequent problems, and they are red flags that I want to share with you. And I think I'm going to do a good job explaining why these features are problematic and why you should consider avoiding them, if not at the very least, be aware of them. If you hear me out and you still disagree with me, please let me know about it in the comment section. That is my favorite feature of this platform and of this community. I get on here, I share my experience, I share my opinions, and some people push back and challenge my opinions, and I love it. I love when my opinions and my ideas are challenged. I feel like that is the best way to grow. So I welcome the pushback. And though I do feel very confident about what I'm going to share with you today, that doesn't mean that we still can't have a dialogue about it. Now, to start with, everybody has a pet hate, a pet peeve, some minor thing that gets under the skin and pokes at a nerve. And to start with, I want to share my pet hate with you. I have to get it off my chest. This is a mistake that I see frequently with an amazing frequency. Even in books put out by major publishers, there's still this mistake that just drives me absolutely mad. This is the piano score for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the first movement. A lovely piece of music. And here you will notice this carrot-shaped looking thing that I've circled in red. That is a crescendo. That informs the musicians that they should gradually and slowly increase the volume. You will notice that the crescendo covers a musical phrase. A crescendo does not cover a single note. That's a crescendo. It is a journey, a slow and gradual journey to the climax. It comes from the verb crescere from Italian, which means to grow. It is the present participle of crescere. It means literally growing. The crescendo marks the journey. It is not the arrival. The crescendo is not a punctual event. It is a gradual series of events leading up to its culmination. So when I come across the expression, it reached a crescendo, or it grew to a crescendo. No, No, it did not. It did not do either of those things. No, a crescendo is the journey. It is not the arrival. It reached a climax. It grew to a boiling point. It grew to a breaking point. It reached a culmination. Reach a crescendo doesn't make any sense. That is not what a crescendo is. I was on a train in Portugal. This was many years back, and I'm reading this book. And I'm not really enjoying the book, to be honest with you. And I come across this expression, and then the argument reached a crescendo. And I got so angry that I threw the book down the aisle, and it hit the door and landed with a splat on the floor. And I was not proud of my temper tantrum. But a few stops later, I got off the train and I left the book behind. Anyway, the misuse of the word crescendo, this expression that doesn't make any sense, that is my pet hate. Do you have a often misused word or misused expression that drives you absolutely mad? I would be very curious to hear about it in the comment section. And now that I have got that off my chest, which feels good, by the way, thank you for listening. Now that I've got that off my chest, red flags of unpolished writing. The first red flag, and it's a weird one, but I come across it a lot. Well, I come across it occasionally, but every time I come across it, the manuscript on the whole suffers from many problems. It's poorly written on the whole. And that first red flag is coffee. Coffee? Michael, what are you talking about? I'm talking about coffee. Do you have a scene in your manuscript or scenes where your characters are drinking coffee? What? Michael, coffee is a normal thing. Everybody drinks coffee. There's nothing wrong with characters drinking coffee. What are you talking about? I know you're a bit odd, but have you lost the plot? Maybe I have lost the plot. I can just tell you from a lot of experience that when characters are in a scene drinking coffee, there's a very, very high chance that this manuscript is weak and poorly written, and I can't explain why. As writers, we do not want our characters interacting in a void. Perhaps they need to have a conversation, but we want to have them do something else, to interact, manipulate objects at the very least. But we don't know what we want the characters to do. We know that this conversation is important, the scene is important, but the characters need to do something. And the writer is constantly drinking coffee while they're writing. So consciously or unconsciously, that slips into the manuscript. And in this scene, the characters are drinking coffee or the characters are snacking. There is a very good example of this in the infamous book Son of Rosemary by Ira Levin. Now, I love Ira Levin, love his books. This is not a good book. This was the last book he wrote. I'm not sure why he wrote it. He did not seem very interested in writing it. It is, unlike all his other books, Son of Rosemary is sloppy, poorly written. The story meanders. Doesn't seem like he really knows what the story is about. It was universally panned by critics and readers alike. And if you read this book, it will jump out at you that in most scenes, overwhelming majority of scenes, the characters are drinking coffee or the characters are snacking. He doesn't know what he wants the characters to do. He knows that they need to be speaking, but he doesn't really have a great sense of who these characters are and what their objectives are, other than these conversations, these info dumps that they need to have. This is not a good book, but it is a good example of this red flag that writers need to be aware of. There are a few reasons why characters drinking coffee or characters snacking is potentially problematic. Firstly, it's quite mundane. I mean, everybody drinks coffee and every day. There's nothing particularly creative or inventive or exciting about that. Secondly, you're not telling me anything about the characters with that activity. Yeah, but Michael, it's not the coffee that matters, it's the conversation that they're having. That's what's really important. Okay, agreed. But I would suggest that you could take that conversation and have your characters doing almost anything else in almost any other setting, and you would be making better use of the character's time and your reader's time. For example, a woman wants to speak to her neighbor and to find out if she knows about the scandal happening next door. So she goes to the neighbor's house, the neighbor invites her in, they have some coffee, and they have this very important exchange. Okay, I read that scene and it's a red flag to me because the characters are drinking coffee, I'll be honest. And I would suggest that any other activity, any other setting would work better. Let's say the woman comes over to the neighbor's house and the neighbor is gardening, for example, some random example. We could have the exact same exchange of information. We don't need to write any more words to explain the gardening as opposed to explaining drinking coffee. And I know a lot more. Firstly, it's more interesting, more creative than drinking coffee. And I know more about these characters and what's going on. Firstly, I know that the character is relatively well off. I mean, she has a garden. I know that she, to an extent, is physically fit. She's outside. She's able to do physical activity. I know that it's a nice day out. And also, you could use it to build intrigue. Maybe they have to keep their voices down and make sure that people who are passing don't hear. The lady gardening, she has sharp objects in her hand that she's stabbing the earth and she's pulling at the weeds. So there's some activity there that you could use to mirror the conversation or mirror the internal dialogue. There are a lot of opportunities here that you don't really have with drinking coffee. But most importantly, of all the manuscripts and all the books that I've read, not a single one of them suffered from too many scenes of people gardening. Now, if you have a scene or scenes in your manuscript where characters are drinking coffee or characters are snacking, does that mean that your writing is weak or that your manuscript is underdeveloped? I haven't seen your writing. I haven't seen your manuscript. I don't know. But ask yourself, are you making the best use of your words? Are you making the best use of your character's time? I love coffee. I drink a lot of it every day. But let's be honest, there is nothing creative or compelling about a scene where characters are drinking coffee. And I have come across too many manuscripts that overall are poorly written, that feature scenes of characters drinking coffee. Too many examples for me not to realize that this is a red flag. Now, the next red flag, some of you are not going to like this, but the next red flag that warns me that there's a good chance that this manuscript needs a bit more work. That red flag is present participle clauses. What's a present participle clause, Michael? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. A present participle clause is when you take one sentence and you cram it into another sentence. What you do is you remove the subject, you add ing to the verb, and you cram it into another sentence, either at the beginning or the end usually. For example, I uploaded this video hoping people would like it and want to subscribe. So hoping people would like it, there is my present participle clause. But Michael, present participle clauses are perfectly legitimate tools to use in writing. I use them all the time in my writing, and my writing isn't weak. you're crazy. Fair point. I am crazy, but I also have a lot of experience in this domain. I am not saying your writing is weak. I am saying this is a red flag. Let's take a look at some examples. "Where are you two going?" Eddie inquired with a tinge of jealousy, popping open his second can of beer as Bobby and Priscilla crept toward the seclusion of the family crypt. "For a walk," Bobby replied tersely over his shoulder, ushering Priscilla through the towering marble pillars of the Grabowski mausoleum. "That Bobby's a real pig," Lupe observed with no particular expression, sucking the last of her beer from the upturned container. Seizing the moment when the focus was on the departing twosome, Twinkie eased his portly frame off the bench and quietly slipped across the dead lawn to the rear of the cutlass. He wedged his hand into his back pocket of his faded Levi's and removed a book of matches and a small package wrapped in tissue, which he tore open in a flurry. Crouching beside the wheel of the car, he struck the match and raised it to the dangling fuse of the Red Devil firecrackers, tossing them to the ground. He hustled back to his friends with his forefingers stuck in his ears, plopped down on the ground, and waited for the show to begin. You probably recognized the present participle clauses. There were many. If you did not find that passage particularly annoying, congratulations, I mean that sincerely. You have a much higher tolerance for poor writing than I do, and in consequence there are a lot more books that you will be able to enjoy. Sadly I cannot. However, if you are a writer, you should be able to recognize that passage as a good example of weak and unfocused writing. Firstly, I think we all recognized it. There is just too much information crammed into the sentence. It does not create a smooth and easy read, which is what you would want from a pulp genre book like this is. There are multiple actions crammed into every sentence. In fact, the first sentence has 3 actions happening in 2 different locations. This writing is very unfocused. If it happens occasionally, it's not that big of a deal, probably. Unfortunately, when it happens regularly, which is the case in this book, it becomes very difficult to read, and this book is a mess. In the second sentence, we have another present participle clause. It is part of the dialogue tag, and it is not related to the dialogue. It is not even directed to the person whom the character is speaking to. In the next sentence, again, there's another present participle clause. Again, it is part of the dialogue tag. And not only is this writing unfocused, but the lack of variety in sentence structure is creating a boring, if not frustrating read. Also, the present participle clause is meant to express actions that happen simultaneously. Here in this book, or in this passage, the author takes a very generous interpretation of what simultaneous means. The narrator is approximate, which is not a characteristic generally that we want a narrator to have. It is not possible for the character to speak and drink beer at the same time. So these actions are not exactly simultaneous. Again, the narrator is being approximate. Perhaps if that happens occasionally, it might not be a big deal. I think it is a big deal. But unfortunately, in this work, it doesn't happen occasionally. It happens frequently. In fact, we have another example of this a few lines later. Crouching beside the wheel of the car, he struck the match and raised it to the dangling fuse of the Red Devil firecrackers, tossing them to the ground. So he crouched, he lit the firecrackers, and he tossed them to the ground. All at the same time. That is impossible. And also, what did he toss to the ground? Did he toss the matches or did he toss the firecrackers? It's not exactly clear. The narrator is approximate and unfocused. So what we have in this passage or in this book, actually I can't say for the whole book because I stopped reading after 2 chapters because every page is like this. But what we have in this writing is we have unfocused writing, we have an approximate narrator, and we have so much information crammed into each sentence that we do not create momentum. Instead of one action informing the next or leading to the next, the reader clusters many actions together with no regard for causal relationships or consequences. And because all of these actions are clustered together in a simultaneous way, which is approximate, the idea of time becomes approximate, and we do not have momentum, and good luck creating urgency or immediacy when it is needed. So present participle clauses are contributing to a monotonous read. Too many sentence structures are the same. Unfocused writing. There are too many things happening in one sentence. A lack of momentum because one action does not inform or lead to another action. Instead, they're crammed together. And confusion because there are some actions that happen simultaneously when that is just physically impossible. Another frequent abuse of the present participle clause that I come across is when a writer uses the present participle clause to express the result of an action, which does not work. For example, he glanced across the room, seeing his sister. That does not work because to glance is the action, and to see is the result of that action. The result comes after, not simultaneously, as opposed to much more natural in respecting the causal relationship between these verbs. He glanced across the room and saw his sister, which is a much better choice. We are respecting the causal relationship between these events, or between these verbs. There is also the case of the causal relationship not respected when the present participle clause is not informed by the action verb. This is trickier to spot, but when it happens frequently, it becomes frustrating for the reader. For example, he saw his sister wondering what she was doing there. This doesn't work because to see is the result of to look at or to glance, and to wonder is the result of to think. These actions might seem related, but the causal relationship is not strong enough to justify the present participle clause, as opposed to he saw his sister and wondered what she was doing there. These two events are the results of different verbs. They should not be crammed together. Let's take a look at a few more examples. He caught her eye and walked across the room to meet her. Here, the causal relationship is clear and the writing is focused, as opposed to catching her eye, he walked across the room to meet her. There's no causality. The actions happen simultaneously without one provoking the other. There's no momentum. This is weak writing. Lastly, present participle clauses are frequently accompanied by poor punctuation. For example, she punched the man choking her child. She punched the man, choking her child. Very different meanings here. In the first one, she punched the man choking her child. The man is the one who is choking the child, and presumably she is defending her child. In the second example, she punched the man, choking her child. Here, the woman is doing both actions. She is punching the man while she is choking her child. So in the first sentence of that example, that is not actually a present participle clause. It is a present participle complement to the object. There's a big difference. Unfortunately, if you use a lot of present participle clauses in your manuscript, differentiating between those two is too much to ask the reader. The reader can do this naturally and easily. Unless the reader is overwhelmed with present participle clauses, then it just becomes simply too much to ask. I hope that's not too technical. I hope you understand or you get what I'm trying to say. I would like to make a proposition. I would say I would suggest, perhaps, you take a sample of your writing, for example, the opening of your novel, or maybe a scene that you're struggling with. Take that passage, take that chapter, go through it and identify all the present participle clauses. And then rewrite the passage to eliminate every single instance of the present participle clause. And then take that manuscript and set it aside for a few days. When you go back to that manuscript, read through it, and see if you don't find that writing clearer, more focused, more momentum, and that you like it a lot more. Maybe there will be one or two instances that you will think the present participle clause would help. Obviously, that will be for you to determine, but I do think as an experiment, it is a worthwhile experiment, and you might be shocked at the results. Am I saying that you should never use a present participle clause? I'm not saying that exactly. What I am saying is that I have come across too many manuscripts that were poorly written or unpolished, or the manuscripts were underdeveloped, and in so many of those manuscripts, coincidentally, they're lousy with present participle clauses. It's a red flag. So there you have it, a few red flags to be on the lookout for. I hope you found some of the information in this video interesting, or hopefully you were able to get something out of it. If that is the case, a great way to express that is to hit those like and subscribe buttons. I would like to do more videos like this where I take a bit of text and examine it and identify what works with it and what doesn't work exactly and why, and help writers take their writing from good writing to excellent writing. If having your writing or having your manuscript scrutinized, examined, edited, parsed, analyzed in this fashion, if that sounds like something that would appeal to you, if you think that that is something you could benefit from, I will not advertise my services as an editor or a proofreader. I'm very selective about who I take on as clients. Instead, what I would suggest, send me your writing. You can find my email on the channel's homepage. I would like to make more videos like this, and I need manuscripts to edit with the author's consent in order to do that. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if it's a bad idea. To be honest with you, I rarely differentiate between the two. Usually if I have an idea, I just go ahead and do it, and I'll worry about, whether it's good or bad. I'll worry about that later, depending on the consequence. But I would like to do more videos like this about editing, proofreading, about polishing, writing. And so if that sounds like something you could benefit from, send me your writing. It doesn't matter what genre it is, as long as it's fiction. I have no interest in reality. I'm not going to read nonfiction. Keep it under 1,000 words, and just specify in the email that you are fine with me using this to make a publicly available video. Obviously, I will do it anonymously. I don't need to use your name. And we'll see. We'll see if there is interest. We'll see if people send me their writing. We'll see if people even watch this video. I have no idea. If you would like more videos about writing, about editing, proofreading, subscribe to this channel. If I see that this video works and it is gaining interest, I will continue to make more of them. In any event, I look forward to connecting with you in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.